Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's show is a hair-raising werewolf compilation that I hope you guys can sink your teeth into as much as I. Please, as ever, do let me know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share, help build this channel and community. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but my god, the subscriber count is jumping. 25, maybe 30 subscribers per day. Getting crazy, guys. I can't thank you enough for the extra pushing likes, comments and shares. Really does help. Big welcome to all of you brand new subscribers as well. Welcome to the family. Hope you enjoyed the channel. Don't forget to check out the playlists for true stories, compilations, and also all the rest of the content. As ever, if you have a story yourself that you want to share, please do get it over to myself at dmtforestofear@gmail.com. Without further ado, let's get into tonight's story, entitled My Friend and I Transported a Body. Let's get straight into that. For the most part, Tallahassee, Florida is a safe town. Just not where I grew up. Not in Frenchtown. Frenchtown was one of the oldest and brokest neighbourhoods in the city. My parents worked long hours at their shit jobs just to support me as much as they could. Just to keep us in a little one-storey home on Golden Street. I was just a wide-eyed 16-year-old kid at the time, like a young gunslinger. I was confident and radiant, handsome if unathletic, lanky with average height, decent clothes and shoes, but not enough to be considered fly. My soulful eyes complemented my hollow cheekbones. I was like a less muscular Anthony McKay. So yeah, I got laid from time to time. At this point my grades were okay, but not good enough for college. I liked writing but was never passionate about it. Honestly, back then I didn't have any ambitions in much of anything, except for quick sex and quick cash. I don't know. I guess most 16-year-olds were the same. All of us like wandering souls in search of a dream. Too caught up in peer pressure and trends to care about our own individuality. I, Mason Hale, was no different. And neither was my buddy Tyler, for the matter. He was cool and handsome, but still a shithead teen. Just more obnoxious and louder than me. Like the street-smart best friend all over class juvenile delinquents had growing up. At 16, I could drive. And I had some freedom with my mum and dad working the late shift. So naturally, Tyler liked tagging along with me on our wild weekends. Bored with Frenchtown, we'd started venturing out to Wilson Green, more of the blue-collar district. The people here dressed a lot nicer than in Frenchtown. They lived better, and yes, they had partied better. I'm talking better drugs, bigger parties, and just all-round sexier people. We call it the Beverly Hills of Tallahassee's hoods. Because of me, we managed to get into Hayden Hammond's parties. Hayden was the big fish of Wilson Green's small pond. More like Big Boss, actually. Hayden's lavish lifestyle and high income made him stand out like royalty. And like royalty, he had power in the form of some tough motherfucking bodyguards. Most of the people in Wilson were well aware he dealt serious drugs, and ran all the gang shit out there. But, if anything, such notoriety made him a bit of a folk hero. And why wouldn't it, considering Hayden gave his neighbours better and easier jobs than the local government ever could. My connection with Hammond went back to my older sister, Sophia. She worked with him back in 2008 to 2009. I was positive he had a crush on her, honestly. I was positive there'd been more than just business partners. At the time, there was some minor drama since Frenchtown had its own sloppy gang. I'm talking mostly just 30-year-old burnouts and SoundCloud rappers trying to play hard, like middle schoolers proud of themselves for selling dime bags. Needless to say, our Frenchtown neighbours harassed Sophia constantly, to the point where some bitch next door snitched on her. Sophia ended up getting 15 years in a Gadsden correctional facility. The snitch got a bullet to the pussy and forehead from Hayden's crew. Sophia was almost 10 years older than me, so I never understood her involvement too well, or how she refused every plea deal, much to my parents' disappointment. Through it all, she stayed loyal to Hayden. Then again, maybe she didn't have a choice. Any squealing from her would have meant a death sentence for our entire family. Yet, like a big brother I never had, Hayden reached out to me during junior year. He'd invite me and Tyler over to hang out with the boys. I gotta say, Frenchtown was no damn Wilson Green. Every Friday and Saturday night spent at Hayden's spot was like winning a lottery ticket to Willy Wonka's, only with alcohol, marijuana and pussy rather than colourful candy. These motherfuckers knew how to party, even when they gave me and Tyler shit about Frenchtown. Hayden and his crew made us feel comfortable. And over time, Hayden trusted us. I mean, he knew we were broke as shit and alienated high schoolers. So, like a charitable politician, he'd hand us jobs. No, Tyler and me weren't fucking gangsters or whatever. We just did simple shit like selling pots at school, or telling the crew all about the shitty Frenchtown gang. Not that Wilson Green had anything to worry about in this lopsided rivalry. And at the end of the day, we weren't doing the serious shit that got Sophia in trouble. We were all friends. We got to go to Hayden's parties, and the shit was easy money. Like steady small-time crooks, Tyler and me did this for months, all the way up to our latest job. In the cold heart of January, Hayden wanted us to pick up some shit from Marianna, Florida. It was only a 40-minute drive, and I could just use my car. But still, this wasn't just selling pot to a 20-year-old high schooler. Like an advanced quest for 2 novice nights, this task seemed bigger and more important. $200 apiece for me and Tyler was bigger paid too. But there was never really any pressure on us to do this for some gang initiation bullshit. The boys in Wilson Green weren't about that, and definitely not Hayden Hammond. There were never any offers to join the gang or commit violence. Hayden had a heart. So Hayden gave us the address, and on a Saturday afternoon, me and Tyler rode down to Marianna together. All we knew was we were supposed to meet one of Hayden's old boys, Brady, down there. He'd have the shit, and then we'd ride back with us to deliver it in Tally. Brady would tell us where we needed to go. There was only one demand. We had to go back in Tally by nightfall, or else we wouldn't get paid shit. Hayden was adamant about this. So me and Tyler couldn't fuck this up. Even if my 1998 Corolla was unreliable as shit, and even if we'd be stuck fighting through the January cold like sleigh dogs, and even though nighttime hit us a lot quicker in these winter months, me and Tyler still had to stay focused. On the way to Marianna, we did our best to stay relaxed. Me and Tyler both wore gloves and dark hoodies. Pretty severe winter clothes for North Florida, but hey, January could get fucking cold, even in the daytime. And my car's heater was horrible. The Corolla's radio, about the only fucking thing that worked. I had to even hit the speedometer and gas meter from time to time just to get an accurate update. The trip was easy, a straight shot from Tally to Marianna, all on a populated 4-lane highway. A new highway without any potholes or out-of-place deer running around. The Corolla like a ship cruising on smooth ocean water. We made great timing. At around 5:15 I pulled into one of those Marianna State Cavern's more desolate parking lots. And there, already waiting for us, was Brady. He stood outside a beat-up mum van. Brady was far from a mum. Far from a parent, for that matter. Considering his rugged, pitbull-like face, steroid-fueled muscles bulging from his brown skin, and the 20 pounds of gold chains he wore, I wasn't even sure if the cat was human. More like a prison caricature brought to life by Dr. Frankenstein. Leaning out from the passenger's window, Tyler waved at the man. "Yo, what's up?" Tyler said with a cringy friendliness of an obvious suburban father. For a reply, Brady spat at our car. He turned and walked back to the van. Tyler and me shared uneasy looks. Naz's "Represent" played through our silent dread as we shivered in the cold. "Open the trunk," a harsh voice commanded us. Turning, we saw Brady standing by the van's back seat, both of his gloved hands held on something hidden in the van's darkness. The vehicle's tinted windows offered us no glimpse of whatever the hell we were about to bring back to Tally. Brady's glare locked in on me. "Open it now, god damn it!" Nervous, I popped the trunk, but my stomach felt empty and soulless, like I just pressed on a red nuclear button. Brady then pulled a large black garbage bag out of the van, a heavy bag at that, and even from here I could tell it wasn't for groceries or trash. I just prayed it was roadkill. Leaning out the window, Tyler faced Brady. "Do you need any help?" "Shut the fuck up," Brady yelled. Tyler slunk back in the car like a scolded child. "Represent" kept playing, and for the first time ever, Tyler nor I were joining in on the chorus. Just awkward silence. In the evening's fading daylight, I watched Brady tote the huge bag with both hands beneath it. He carried it like a bulk TV. He didn't even look at us once, and I was kind of glad he didn't. Brady heaved the bag into the Corolla's trunk, and I felt the whole car shake, as if an earthquake had erupted. "What the fuck is he doing?" Tyler whispered to me. My nervous eyes glanced over at the rearview mirror. I don't know. Like the pounding of a judge's gavel, Brady slammed the trunk shut. "Oh boy," Tyler muttered. Armed with a scowl, Brady swung the door open and hopped in the back seat. He sat right in the middle, right where he could hone that glare on me and Tyler, right where he could oversee us like an evil drill sergeant. Just our luck. "Drive," Brady said in a low growl. He retrieved his phone and typed in an address. Following orders, I pulled out of the parking lot. "Where do I need to go?" I asked. "Where else? Tallahassee, you idiot." I glanced towards the rearview mirror. More unease hit me. The mum van was now following us, guided by a mysterious driver that me and Tyler hadn't seen before. And like an undercover squad car, the van stayed on us with discreet closeness. Amused, Brady followed my gaze. "Don't worry about him. That's just Lee." Tyler confronted Brady. "Does Hayden know?" With ferocity, Brady slapped the shit out of Tyler's headrest. Tyler jumped back like a frightened kid. "He's Hayden's boy," Brady yelled. "Now shut the fuck up and don't look at me, arsehole." Rattled, Tyler flashed me another scared look. Doing my best to suppress my own fear, I just gave him a slight nod. This was an easy $200 after all. In silence, "Represent" sounded like a funeral hymn. "Turn that shit off too," growled Brady. From my perspective, I could just see Tyler's rage simmer as he grumbled. But behind those quivering eyes, I knew he wasn't going to do shit. And neither was I. "Sorry," I said. Like a hen-pecked husband, I turned off the radio. Now we really sat in funeral silence. "Just listen to what I say, and we'll finish this shit," Brady said. His eyes drifted over toward a window, toward the fading sun. "And go faster. God damn it. We've got to get there by night." Too scared to even face Brady, Tyler shifted in his seat. I turned onto the 4-lane highway. Sure enough, the mum van followed me step for step, like an ugly spaceship hot on my trail. "Turn on Thorn Road," Brady barked. Uncertain, I looked at him through the rearview mirror. "But the highway's faster." Wielding his iPhone like a knife, Brady pointed it right at me. "Do what I say, arsehole." Like a little lapdog, I followed orders. Again. So we turned on the Thorn Road, a rural 2-lane blacktop surrounded by woods and devoid of houses, not to mention cell phone service. Our trip now padded an extra 10 minutes. Brady cackled like a confident crook. "The highway? Boy, you fucking crazy? We ain't trying to get caught, you fucking idiot." Lee stayed in hot pursuit. Our vehicles the only signs of life in this North Florida galaxy of emptiness. The towering trees blocked out that little sunlight that was left, not to mention whatever warmth we'd had during the day. Now I had to flick on those weak-ass headlights, and saw Tyler shiver as he pulled his hoodie in closer. The Corolla felt like a sleigh ride through the North Pole at this point. The goddamn heater never worked. Annoyed, Brady checked his phone. "Go faster, man. God damn." Like an office drone refusing to confront their boss from hell, I gritted my teeth. Me and Tyler both. "I'm trying," I said. Leaning in closer, Brady glared at the speedometer. "Man, what is this?" The speedometer was stuck at 50 miles per hour, like the cold air had frozen it in place. Only I knew the real reason. My car was a piece of shit. Getting angrier by the second, Brady's hand motioned toward the meter. "This bitch ain't even working. Fix it, motherfucker!" Panicking, I gave the meter a hard slap. Brady stole a nervous look outside, toward the fading sun. "God damn, we ain't got much time!" Like a reanimated Corolla, the speedometer jolted back to life, back to 70 miles per hour. And much to my horror, so did the gas meter. We had less than a gallon left, and the emergency low gas icon was on now. Full of unease, I realised we barely had enough to get to tally, if we were lucky. Brady looked straight at the gas meter, right at the alarming yellow light. "What the fuck? You ain't got no gas, man?" Tyler glared at Brady. "Hey, just chill. Brady lunged at Tyler, making him flinch. "No, this is fucking serious, arsehole." "I think we've got enough," I said. Aggravated, Brady bellowed at me. "Enough. We damn sure better, or else both of y'all getting fucked tonight. I promise you that." Our nerves were working overtime. Tyler and I glanced at each other. "Yeah, you heard me," Brady said. "Y'all ain't seen what a pissed off Hayden will do." Like an agitated father, he gave me a slight shove on the back of the head. "I don't give a fuck who you're related to." I grimaced in fear. This crazy motherfucker knew my name. He knew all about me. Sadistic, Brady flashed me a smile brighter than the van's headlights lurking behind us. "So I suggest you drive a little faster, Mason." Focused, I mashed the gas pedal. We now hit 80, and every bump and pothole made us briefly airborne. Like a desperate bootlegger racing through the wilderness, I kept cruising down Thorn Road, all while the van stayed a few feet behind us, like a starved monster in pursuit, and while the sky only grew darker and darker. Brady checked his phone. "Fucking hurry, shithead!" Glaring, I kept my eyes on the road. The yellow low gas light kept hitting me like a taunt, and one that wouldn't go away anytime soon, much like Brady's onslaught of insults. "Go, bitch!" Brady yelled. "You and your friend want to fucking die tonight?" His restless eyes avoiding me, Tyler did his best to stare at his iPhone. He trembled so bad he couldn't even hold the phone steady. The cold air kept my hands frozen to the wheel. The van's headlights forever followed us, but I didn't say a word. I just fucking drove. And then, finally, we saw life. Lights up ahead, city lights. We were in Tally, and with minutes of daylight left to spare. Brady checked his phone. "Hurry, there's just a few more miles." I stole a look up at the sky. Like an eager understudy, the full moon looked ready to replace the sun, and darkness was upon us. In town, the streetlights were already on. Several businesses already closed, but I didn't care. I knew we had to be close. We were already near David's auto shop and a couple of familiar laundromats. I knew we had to be close. We were already near David's auto shop and a couple of familiar laundromats. Me and Tyler's neck of the woods. Like a timekeeper, Brady's scowl stayed on his phone, on Google Maps. "Take a left at the light," he barked. I turned left on yellow, and I realised we were in Sheila Street, right near our ratchet communal playground. We were in Frenchtown. And like a conjoined twin, the omnipresent van remained close behind, keeping its usual distance and matching our speed. The Corolla's low fuel light began beeping, incessant, irritating beeps. "Keep driving," Brady yelled. Anxious, Tyler looked out the windows. He saw what I saw. We were now in darkness, surrounded by night. "Go, man," Tyler pleaded. I could feel the Corolla lose control, losing life, and like a horse giving way to dehydration, the car began to sputter. The blinking yellow light kept flickering, its beeps formed a maddening soundtrack. Through the frenzy, I scanned the neighbourhood. I recognised these houses. I passed by them every day. Not even the dark could hide their hideous appearance. The mouldy homes, the cluttered yards, the eyesore cars, the decrepit duplexes. Yeah, this was Frenchtown. "Come on!" I heard a panicking Tyler yell. The car slowed to a crawl. The van behind us did the same. Up in the sky, the full moon beamed down on me like an unforgiving spotlight. Brady pointed to the left, pulling over there. I looked over and saw a narrow alleyway, tucked in between an abandoned house and a ghetto church. "Right there?" I asked. "Yeah, just fucking turn," Brady replied. "Turn off the goddamn lights." Making a hard turn, I pulled right into the alleyway. One quick hit flicked off the headlights. "Shit," Tyler exclaimed. Between deep breaths, he looked up at the sky. "I think we made it." "Close enough, son," Brady commented. He lowered his phone. Google Maps was no longer on his screen. I killed the engine. With an agonising groan, the Corolla entered a well-deserved slumber. Deep in my over-worried guts, I knew we'd made it on fumes. Shivering, I gazed up at the glowing moon. Even more cold air now drifted into the car, and the Corolla was no match for this January night. "So what now?" Tyler asked Brady. In a sudden flourish, Brady retrieved a pistol from his pants pocket. "Now this," he said with a smile. "Whoa, what the fuck?" Tyler yelled. Frightened, I confronted Brady's wide smile. The gun stared back at me with a malicious intent. Brady's grip steady, even in the cold. "Yo really thought we weren't going to take you too?" Brady teased. Smirking, he turned. Like an indifferent ship, the van cruised on by. "What the hell?" Brady cried, unusual panic in his voice. He leaned in closer toward the back window. Nothing but our slums greeted him. "What the fuck? Lee!" Tyler grabbed my arm. "Let's go," he whispered as best as he could. Tyler's voice impossible to be discreet, just like his personality. Reacting faster than an assassin, Brady aimed the weapon back at us. "Stay right there," he yelled. We didn't move a muscle. Trembling, Brady grabbed his phone. What the fuck's he doing? Held at gunpoint, all Tyler and I could do was exchange nervous glances. Together, we shivered from the cold and from the dread. Brady's phone buzzed to life, an incoming call. In a frenzy, he answered. "Lee, where the hell are you?" he yelled. Even in his mercy, I could tell Brady wasn't the same confident sociopath he was earlier. Now, he was a panicking mad scientist rather than an arrogant one. The fucker was shivering from fear. Sweat even flowed down his face. He no longer held the gun in a confident grip either. He looked fucking scared. "Look, man, don't leave me! Don't leave me!" Brady screamed. Full of fear, he turned toward the back window once more. "I'll pay you off! Man, I swear! Tell Hayden I can pay him back!" The car shook. A hard shake, like a frantic movement on a shitty rowboat. Only I wasn't so sure it was just from Brady's panic. Behind uneasy eyes, Tyler faced me. "What the fuck?" "I don't know," I muttered. Brady looked up out the windshield, up toward a full moon that was glowing like a neon sign. "Oh fuck," Brady yelled into the phone. "Oh no! Oh for fuck! You can't fucking do this to me! That wasn't part of the plan! Lee! It was supposed to be just Frenchtown! God damn it!" "What the fuck's going on here?" Tyler demanded. Angry, Brady put the gun to his face. "Shut the fuck up!" His outburst faded to vulnerable horror. "No! No!" Brady yelled into his phone. He lowered his iPhone, his helpless eyes glued to the home screen. Lee had hung up. "Don't leave me! Don't leave me out here!" Cautious, Tyler reached toward him. "Look, man, I don't know what's going on." More defensive than a pit bull, Brady pointed the gun at us. "Stay back! Stay back!" Tears formed in his eyes, and his whole body was quivering, the trigger finger included. Tyler threw his hands up. "Okay, man, okay. Fuck this, we gotta get out of here," Brady yelled. He reached for the backseat door handle. "Come on!" Like a huge knife, a long, hairy arm emerged through the back seat, and like a javelin, it shot right through Brady's chest. Blood shot out all over the Corolla in a messy red paint job. Like the arm was offering us a gift, bits of pulpy intestines clung to the clawed hand. The claws were extended and sharp, the arm's dark hair now coated in crimson. Lurching forward, blood spurted from Brady's mouth, his dying eyes staring right at us, and finally he let go of the gun. "Oh fuck!" Tyler yelled in terror. Horrified, we both stared at the sight. Brady's weak hands grasped at the muscular arm. Like a tumour, the arm appeared to grow from within his body. By now, blood spewed from Brady like a grisly fountain. Then with a sudden quickness, the arm drew itself back. Nothing was there now except the gaping grisly hole in Brady's chest. Grasping at his wounds, Brady fell against my headrest. Clumps of wild hair and bits of his intestines scattered throughout my car like vomit. Brady's mouth moved but couldn't utter a word, not through all that blood. Tyler lunged back. "Whoa, fuck!" A bellowing howl erupted from within the Corolla, a howl full of irate anger, a hungry howl, and one that echoed right from the giant hole in my back seat, right from the trunk. Tyler grabbed my arm. "What the hell's that, man?" Under the moonlight, the monster tore its way through the rest of the back seat. A storm of blood and ripped fabric erupted inside. And there, in the trunk, a pair of red eyes stared back at us. Saliva poured from a huge mouth. Fueled by immense force, the werewolf lunged out to kill, and one quick swipe from a clawed hand ripped Tyler's face right off. His peeled flesh dangled like torn wrapping paper. Tyler's face nothing more than a red smorgasbord, just eyes and exposed muscle. I cried out, horrified. His dying arms flailing about, and Tyler fell straight into the back seat. Upon impact, his flayed face got smashed into a pile of mushy goo. Like a hungry child, the werewolf jammed its furry hands into his mouth and savoured the taste of my best friend's flesh. Seeing the creature's eyes glow with excitement, I knew the food must have been finger-licking good. Craving more, the monster lunged straight into Brady's dead neck. The werewolf's mouth, mammoth teeth ripping out a fucking chunk as if he was tearing into a piece of chicken. And he was such a messy eater. Blood sprayed all over my face, but I didn't even flinch. Both the terror and cold petrified me. The werewolf slurped up the stringier flesh. He howled with glee before tearing out another juicy chunk. The fucker had himself a real moonlight dinner. And then the monster focused those eerie red eyes right on me. In a sickening epiphany, I realised this was the body we picked up earlier, the man in the bag. I could even still see pieces of black plastic stuck to the bloodied fur. His torn-collared shirt and jeans still stuck to the 6-foot creature as well. Sensing my fear, the werewolf lunged right on top of me. My back hit the steering wheel and a brief pathetic horn blared, but I knew it was a noise no one would ever hear. Leaning over me, the excited creature revealed an elongated mouth. Rows and rows of his sharp teeth greeted my horrified eyes, not to mention his heavy, panting, dripped saliva all over me. I could feel his thick fur brush against me, the moist blood stick to my skin, and this up close and personal, I could see how fucking sharp those claws really were. His muscles bulging, the werewolf tilted his head back and let out a ferocious howl, a manoeuvre made to scare me even more than I already was, and it fucking worked. Cowering like a timid soldier, I turned away. "Oh God!" I cried. And with great force, the werewolf grabbed me by the throat. Behind hungry eyes, he leaned in closer toward my vulnerable face. His claws were ready to sink in, as were the fangs that only seemed to grow longer. Cringing, I closed my eyes and braced for the fatal blow. "Holy shit!" an obnoxious voice yelled, a booming voice. Startled, me and the werewolf both looked out the back window. A couple of people now stood near the Corolla, all of them high as a kite and dressed like they were rap video rejects. All of them from the Frenchtown gang. "What the fuck is that?" another one of the posers screamed. Making my move, I pushed the werewolf back and swung open the door. I knew I'd caught the bitch off guard, but I could still feel a brush of air hit me when his frenetic paw just missed my neck. Like a frustrated young animal, the monster cried out into the night. Fueled by adrenaline, I ran out into the alleyway. The creature's long, shrill howl followed me. "Yo, what the fuck's that, man?" one of the Frenchtown boys hurled at me. But I didn't stick around. I ran all the way back to the hood, far away from that goddamn Corolla. Behind me, I heard a disturbing soundtrack. I heard the werewolf's heavy footsteps, his howls, his growls, and the terrified yells of all of those teens. Not to mention the sounds of struggle and the eerie sudden silence that blanketed the alley soon after. I didn't turn around until I was in the middle of the street, back in civilization. I looked back at the alley, and to my rising horror, I realised I wasn't even safe in my own stomping grounds. The alleyway's bloodbath lied before me. My Corolla's exterior matched the interior, all blood and flesh, not to mention the many scattered severed limbs draped across my car like horrific hood ornaments, most of the limbs gnawed with brutal precision. About my only solace from the terrifying sight was that the werewolf was gone. He hadn't followed after me, but my triumph was short-lived when I heard that guttural howl erupt throughout Frenchtown. Overcome with fear, I looked up at the dark sky, and like a smirking god, the full moon shined bright upon me. In a disturbing soundtrack, I could hear screams surround me, men, women, children, lights cut on in every home in a frenetic pattern. The community was in panic, and the agonising screams only grew louder and more collective to form a tormented chorus. Tears formed in my eyes, a harsh breeze chilled me to the bone, and my disturbed soul was twisted in knots. So twisted it may as well have been a noose around my neck. No, this wasn't police brutality, or a drive-by, or a street brawl. Hayden Hammond had unleashed a monster in my neighbourhood. As if the rivalry wasn't lopsided enough, Wilson Green wanted to take us out for good. Me and Tyler were the pawns. The monster was Hayden's closer. Somehow, my family and I came out safe during the Frenchtown rampage. Or at least, that's what the press dubbed it. They blamed the massacre on all the gang violence, and there weren't many witnesses alive to tell the truth. And those that did were just written off as drunks and liars. You know, just your average racist stereotype. I knew no one would ever believe me either, not even my own parents. I still feel guilty about what happened to Tyler. Without my best friend, I had no one to turn to anymore, no one to enjoy life with again. And after all that horrible violence, I couldn't even face this community again. Not Frenchtown, not Wilson Green, none of it. About the only good thing to come out of the tragedy was that I managed to turn my life around. I'm now attending a college at UCF, close enough to still see my parents, yet far enough away to still feel safe from the memories. I'm thinking I'll major in English. After all, I've got plenty of stories to tell, especially the horror story that defined my life on that terrifying night in January. Sometimes I do wonder if all these murders were the result of gang warfare. And honestly, I wish they were. In a twisted way, that'd be more comforting, more natural than what the fuck I witnessed. More comforting than the idea of a werewolf out there being used as an assassin. If the rampage was all just the work of gangs, I'd also feel better about my own predicament. You see, I know the events weren't just a dream or a nightmare. Something happened. Otherwise, there's no way I could have gotten these scratches on my neck. Scratches full of scars, more vivid and everlasting than my emotional trauma. At least, the scratches only bother me when the full moon is out. Just some minor jolts of pain here and there. The only problem is, I can never remember what happens on those long nights. Don't go outside during a super blood wolf moon. Let's get straight into that. I'm writing this with the curtains drawn, sitting in my living room with my lights on. I did a double check of all the locks in the house. I'll probably just stay up until I see the sunlight, because there is no chance I'll be able to sleep at this point. I hope you all had a chance to see the eclipse from a safe place. I didn't. As I mentioned before, tonight, January the 20th, there is a super blood wolf moon. Super because it's close, blood because it will be red, and wolf because some ancient lore and folktales speak of super wolf moons in January, during which strange things would happen, and people would change. I love watching events like this. I've always been fascinated by the moon and the power it holds. I began watching the phenomenon from my window, deciding only to go outside when it gets close to a total eclipse, given that it is currently minus 36 degrees Celsius. When the time came, I put on my jacket, 2 hats and some heavy-duty gloves, and my telescope, and went outside on my porch. It was viciously cold, and the wind was aggressive. The wind was so loud in my ears and sounded like a howl. Things on the street were banging, snow and ice were blown around like shrapnel, and I was already tearing up. After 3 minutes, I heard my automatic lock close behind me, shutting me out until I could open it from my phone. I was outside for a solid 20 minutes. The moon was almost in full eclipse when I started to hear rustling coming from between 2 houses across the street. I figured the wind had knocked over some bins or something. I looked back through my telescope at the moon. A moment later, I started to hear slow, rhythmic, squishing noises that you hear when you walk in deep snow. I lowered my scope to see something I cannot for the rest of my life explain. Emerging from the 2 houses was a dog, but not a normal dog. A huge dog, but it still didn't look normal. It was more of a wolf. I stared at it for a second, and it stared back. After a brief second, it suddenly stood up on its hind legs. This is when I turned to run back inside. I pushed on the door, only for it to be locked. I grabbed my phone from my pockets, ripping off my gloves and navigating to the lock app. It felt like it took hours to connect via Bluetooth. Any longer, and I don't know what I would have done. Luckily it connected fast, and I pushed my way inside. Once in, I slammed the heavy door and locked it. I sunk down to the floor, still trying to process what had just happened. I decided to take a peek outside through the camera on my smart doorbell. I froze as I saw the thing standing at the bottom of the steps on my porch. I didn't move as not to make a noise. I waited for what seemed like hours for it to turn and skulk back across the street. And just as I finally let out a deep breath, it turned back from the middle of the road as if it heard me. I froze, but then it turned and went back down on its front legs and disappeared between the houses. As much as I love to watch an eclipse, I think I'll be doing so from inside from now on, with the doors locked and the lights on. The wolves need to eat. Let's get straight into that. The wolves need to eat. I've grown up knowing that my whole life, knowing that the cellar door needs to never be touched. I can hear them down there, howling and growling. I can smell them too, the smell of their coats, pungent and animal-like. I have never seen them. Only mother and father are allowed down there, while my sister and I watch from above. Wide-eyed, our hair matted, and nails jagged. My sister grins. She has been down there once, the night of her 16th birthday. Tomorrow is my turn. The wolves need to eat. I know that if they do not eat, something bad will happen to us all. So I pinch my nose closed with one hand and slice meat with the other. It is why my sister is in the village right now, her hair done up, her nails clipped. The wolves need to eat. She brings home a man, tall and well dressed. His mouth puckers upon entering our house. I have become immune to the smell of rotted meat and damp and mildew. My sister coos, running her hand up and down his arm, whispering lies in his ear. She licks her lips, laughs, and then whispers the truth. He turns to leave, but I am there. I slit his throat. He turns to run, hands grasping at nothing. My sister shoves him. My hands are oil slick. The wolves need to eat. I shake, bile pouring out of my mouth. I crouched over the bucket. My sister wipes my forehead and my mother holds my hair. They fuss over me and tell me it's okay. My mother kisses my brow and she smells like death. I shove her back, leaving wet maroon handprints on her dirty white dress. My father slaps me. I am part of this family, keeper of the beasts. I cannot afford to be weak. I stand, shaky. My cheeks stings. My hands have dried. My father embraces me yet I feel no warmth. He hands me a saw. The wolves need to eat. The man is heavy, even separated into 4 metal piles. My father throws open the cellar door. Our bare feet cause the boards to bend and creak. When my father reaches the last stair, he turns, walking towards the sounds of starving animals. Now that I am closer, I can hear better. The howling becomes ragged, more like screaming than animals calling. I can hear chains, but my father is too far ahead with the lantern for me to see them. The wolves. "Help us!" someone says weakly. I bump into my father. He drops the lamp. I can see them now. I don't want to. They're not wolves. They are people, women and children, men. They are thin, too thin, and on their spines are bruises and tattered fur. My father turns, emptying the buckets. They leap, long nails and teeth, trampling each other to feed on the flesh of the dead man. My father grins. The wolves need to eat. Where they hunt. Let's get straight into that. The bangs, all of them, Their sounds. They awoke me. I bolted right up in my bed, looking around. I found nothing out of the ordinary. My mum was perfectly normal. All my things exactly where I'd left them. The half-empty glass of water still half empty. The comic book I was reading still unfinished. But those sounds, I had heard enough of them to know what they were. Gunshots. I had a cousin that worked for the law. Forehead James had fired enough for me to recognise them at the drop of a hat. He was called that because he had a huge scar across his forehead, which he had received in a supposed act of heroism. I stepped off my bed, still dazed and in a confusion as to what was going on. We had recently moved to the suburbs of a small town, so there's always a risk of bandits raiding our neighbourhood. I made my way downstairs, worried about Mum and Dad. The stairs creaked and groaned as if they were in pain as I made my way down. What I saw shocked me. Everything was in disarray. The furniture all torn up and dishes all broken. I know, I'm a heavy sleeper, but good heavens, this was just ridiculous. The wooden floor was lined with a river of blood leading outside. The nauseating smell of gunpowder filled my lungs as I tried to make sense of what was happening. Mum and Dad weren't in their room. I put on my jacket as I made my way out. I noticed something very bizarre. Tufts of grey fur all over the porch. I leaned in to examine it. They were covered in blood, and some of them were parallel to the trail of blood leading away. I started to follow it. The more I looked around, the more the events started to elude me. Everyone's front doors were wide ajar, and it seemed similar scuffles had taken place all over town. The fur and the occasional spots of blood were everywhere. If I were to describe to you what the situation reminded me of, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been to a festival or carnival after it had ended? The town reeked of that similar feeling, as if a massive event had just transpired, and I was the only observer of its aftermath. The thought of how I could mindlessly slip through the entire thing bugged me incessantly. Still, oblivious, I noticed something on the ground a few feet ahead of me. It was very tiny. I approached the object as it glistened under the moonlit night, which is why it caught my eye in the first place. I leaned to pick it up and immediately dropped it. It was extremely hot to the touch and had burned my fingers somewhat. Some sort of shining piece of metal. It seemed as if it had broken off of something. As I was about to inspect it closely, I heard a blood-curdling howl. It sent a wave of shivers down my spine. I had never heard anything like it before. The sound was accompanied by another ear-piercing and ear-splitting bang. Instinctively, I ran towards the sound. As young as I was never one to cower in this situation. All I could think of were Mum and Dad, and their safety. The thought of harm befalling them was something I was trying to completely avoid. It was an exaggerated feeling of the same feeling you get when you were really young and your parents were out for a long time, and your mind wanders off to remain of what if something happened to them. It was something I chose not to think about. It took me a while to realise where I was headed, towards the woods outside the area. Now in the woods, I was really far from home. It didn't bother me as much as it should have bothered a child my age, and I'd been very good at not getting lost. I was always good with directions. Making my way through the forest, I couldn't shake off an eerie sense of terror from my back. And soon enough, that feeling solidified itself into one of true horror. The smell of gunpowder was replaced by a horrid stench, even stronger than it. I looked towards it, only for a pair of eyes to meet mine. The moment our eyes locked, I understood that whatever those eyes belonged to was dead. And yes, you read right, I said whatever. Because this was no human. The dead yet sharp eyes I was looking into were those of a fierce animal. Drool dripped down its muzzle. It was an enormous hound. No, not a hound, a wolf. I had never seen one before in my life, but surely they could have been this big. And what's stranger is that it was wearing tatters of what seemed to be clothes. It had brown boots on, as well as other garments that were now ripped to shreds. Fear began to broil inside me. Alongside the fluttering of butterflies in my stomach, I pushed on, and the more I worked my way forwards, the more I encountered dead bodies of these wolf-like creatures, massacred and sprawled out throughout the woods. I figured it must have been townfolk. Some places I even thought I recognised some people. Had I been living in a town filled with them? What was this? Where are my parents? What's going on? Thoughts like these kept striking me over and over again until I came upon another body, and all the thoughts silenced. Everything went quiet. Even if I didn't recognise him by his facial features, I would recognise that huge scar anywhere. That scar that horizontally slashed into his forehead. It was my cousin. Forehead James. My knees buckled as I started to tremble, all sense flying away from the world. Streams of tears made their way down my cheeks. Tears that I didn't even know were there. I managed to mumble, "James," before breaking out into a cry. I nearly collapsed. Nearly. I had to know. Were my parents a victim of this? As little sense as it made for them to be monsters, they were still my parents. Before I moved on, I noticed something in James's scar. Something shiny and silver. I was too scared to get any closer though. I'd been walking for a while, and I was finally making my way out the other end of the woods. It was jarring to suddenly step out into the bright moonlight. Even so, I saw something in the distance. Two figures stood stark under the blazing moon. Two humans. Humans I knew. Mum and Dad. Subconsciously, a big smile streaked across my face as tears of utter joy flowed down like a river, and I called out to them in a big wave of relief. However, as they turned around, I saw that they were covered in blood, from head to toe, blood and the same tufts of fur. But they weren't like those monsters. They were still themselves. They were... Dad suddenly pulled out something from behind, a gun, unlike any I'd ever seen before. He cocked it and shot at me, point blank. I closed my eyes in a fit of panic, and I heard the same bang I'd been hearing all night, but nothing happened. As I opened my eyes, I noticed that Mum had deflected his arm upwards, and the shot had pierced the sky. Dad looked at her confused. She motioned towards me and said, "That jacket. Oh God, Peter. No, please no." I checked my jacket, the one I'd always worn to see what the problem was, when my body froze. My hands. No, not hands. My hands. They were now paws, rested against my sides, with what looked to be claws protruding from them. I looked on in dismay at the fur-covered limbs I now had, as I reached to touch my face, only to find what was shaped like a muzzle, lined with sharp teeth. This can't be real. This has to be a nightmare. This has to be. My parents had walked away, all the way up to me, and inspected me closely. My mum was in tears, the tears mixing in with the blood and dirt on her face. She said my name when I looked towards her and asked her what was happening. That only made her crying worse. My dad put a hand on my shoulders as he consoled my mum. All of us collapsed there, not knowing what to do. Even in all of this madness, I felt safe. At this age, no matter what the circumstances, you always feel safe with your parents. After what seemed like an eternity, my mum finally began to speak, and she explained the whole situation to me. It turns out that my mum and dad were werewolf hunters. They'd been trained since childhood and were part of a big organisation that undertook this mission. They'd kind of separated from it in recent years, albeit still undertaking jobs now and then, as they believed it was their destined duty, which they could never run away from. They had settled down and had me too, and tonight was their biggest mission yet, to blend in and then take down an entire town of werewolves. My mum had put sleeping medicine in my water to make sure I would sleep throughout the entire endeavour. However, seems like my extraordinary sense had woken me up to the sound of those gunshots. That was the only thing they hadn't accounted for. Their son being a werewolf, the very thing they swore to eradicate. "Honey, you're a werewolf," my mum told me. With a heavy heart, they told me that I could no longer live with them. The organisation would surely find out that I was a werewolf. I cried at this, as did they. But there was nothing either of us could do about it. It seemed none of them knew about any existing cures to my condition. I was sent to live with distant relatives and haven't seen my parents in years. I hope they haven't forgotten me, as I haven't forgotten them. As sad as it was, Mum left me with a single souvenir, a parting gift to remember her by, a silver bullet. Wow, fantastic stuff there. Do enjoy a good werewolf compilation. As ever, big thank you to the authors. Do take time to check out their Reddits in the description box below. I'll leave the links for those. As ever, please do let me know down below what you thought. Please do like and share and help build this channel and community. And of course, if you yourself have a story to share, whether it's something that didn't quite make sense or something that sent pure shivers up or down your spine and terror into your soul, please do get in contact with myself at the usual email address. That's dmtforesterfear@gmail.com. Don't forget, guys, we have brand new designs going up in the merch store, set for your summer holidays. And as ever, above all, I hope you're well and happy and enjoying your weekend. And remember, be safe, not sorry.